So you started Kosas in 2015.
Yeah.
Which it's been a minute. And I feel like it's like blown up in the last 3-4 years, but I want to go back because it's interesting. Like prior to interviews, I always try to do some research around founders, and sometimes it's like there's just not a lot out there. And with you, that was actually the case. And so I'm really excited to like fully learn about you from scratch. Okay. So what were you doing prior to Kosas?
Well, right before I was, how old was I? I was 29 or 30 when I first started working on Kosas. Mm-hmm. I had just had my daughter. She was 8 months old.
You started working on a business with a fresh baby?
I actually think it helps because there's like no one like a new mom to get shit done.
And that's also true, yeah.
So she was a big inspiration for me just because I so wanted her to, it was the most in love with anyone I ever felt, and I wanted everything good for her, and I wanted her to be able to do everything she wanted to do, and I had spent my whole life wanting to do this thing, and I felt like I had to finally pull the trigger on doing the thing that I felt like I came to the world to do so that I could have credibility when I encouraged her to do the same.
I love that. That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
And what were you doing before that? Like, were you also an entrepreneur prior to this? Like, what was your career path before this?
No, I wasn't an entrepreneur. I mean, well, you're born an entrepreneur,
yeah,
right?
This is
like,
true.
You know that. Right before that, I was studying fine art for 2 years with an artist in LA. I was like really deep diving into color. I'm giving you the backwards, like for some reason the Benjamin Button version of like I'm growing down here story.
I do the same, by the way, as well. When I'm on interviews and like someone asks me, I'm like, well, right before Ray, I was doing this, and then before that, so I get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a long time ago now because it's been 10 years almost because it was 2014 when I really started working on the brand. Before 2015 is just when launch happened, and I had gone to school for biology, so I was pre-med during that time. I'm, by the way, terrified of hospitals. I can't be in one at all, so I was like, well, that's not going to work. And then but I love beauty, so I was like, plastic surgery is what I would love to do. I love faces so much. I mean, it's like my passion, but I would have to go through the hospital to get there, and there's just no way I can do that. So I was in college. I discovered like kind of doing research that became like part of the way that I could have my sciences but still have a career. And so like I started doing research in labs. I had a few jobs working in labs, basically doing like microbiology and like quality assurance and like, you know, various different kind of manufacturing processes, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then but like at that point, I definitely knew I wanted to have a beauty brand. I've known that for a long time. It was just a long time ago. Mm-hmm. Like there was really no way to do it unless you really were like, you know, doing it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't, there was no internet, there was no Instagram, there was no like e-commerce. Like
2014 is like
by 2014 there was. Yeah. But when I first had the thought,
even 2014 is fucking vintage.
It was vintage. I know. Don't remind me.
Prior to that, oh my God.
Prior to that, yeah. It was 2002 when I first decided I wanted to have a beauty brand.
Oh my God. Yeah. This is like you were looking at encyclopedias at the library.
I thought I was going to have to open a retail store. It was a pipe dream. It's like saying I want to be an astronaut or I want to be an actress or something like that, that like even those things feel a little bit more achievable now for some reason. But like at the time, it's a pipe dream. Yeah. It's not something that can really happen. By 2014, it could really happen. There were a lot of tools that we all had, like the barrier to entry really went down, and I was ready. I did go to business school, and after all that is when I came out of business school right during the recession, and there were no jobs anywhere. I lived in Orange County. Orange County got hit really, really, really hard because of like the entire subprime mortgage industry was really like based there, and so it was decimated, and that was the first time that I was like, there's no career to pursue, so why don't I do what I really love, which is really learn about color and art forms. And so I spent a couple years doing that, and it was that led up to me actually starting Kosas.
And so then you have your daughter, and what motivates you to actually take the leap? And also, why clean beauty? Because back in 2015, like 2014, when you actually had the idea, that wasn't really a thing. It was like a completely nascent category.
I don't think it really existed back then. I had gone through this journey of healing my own body through a variety of different things, whether it was attending to my mental health, to my physical health. And I was employing a lot of different modalities, like really being mindful of what I was eating, starting to incorporate Chinese medicine into my life, some Ayurveda, like really healing through food and like making decisions that felt really right for me about what I was putting in, on, around my body, around my space. And I was living that way. And so when I started to think about how I was going to formulate, everything that I was doing was intentional. So every ingredient I was going to pick was going to be intentional too. There wasn't going to be an ingredient that was showing up in, it was lipsticks at that time. I started with lipsticks. That was going to show up in a lipstick that didn't have a true reason for being there, and that wasn't going to lead to like this looking more beautiful and feeling more comfortable or being more nourishing. And because I was being so intentional with ingredients, the result is like what you would call clean now. We didn't have it then, and I didn't talk about it either.
Interesting.
We didn't really use that word. At the time, there was like natural and organic makeup, and it was associated with
like granola kind of. I know,
yeah, like you buy it at Whole Foods.
Yes.
It comes in a wood package.
Yep.
Like there's nothing sexy, and it definitely
kind of
doesn't work.
bamboo-y, smells a little grassy. I know
Yes.
exactly what you mean.
Exactly, and it's like sheer. Like where's the payoff? It's like dyed with like a flower or something like that, you know. So it doesn't even really work. And I love makeup. Like I want my makeup to be transformative. I love the.
I mean,
It's
your
a
makeup
tool.
right now is like incredible. I can't stop staring at your eyes. So
you.
clearly.
I love makeup. It's like your own little artist every single day. And the lipsticks were really high payoff. They were beautiful. They didn't move. They were so imperceptible. You got like all that payoff, but without any of that uncomfortable feeling. And I wanted people to sense that part of it and not be turned off or make any assumptions about the product before knowing what it was by calling it clean or calling it natural or what. I mean, clean really didn't exist as a word. But then the category started to evolve naturally. And it started to evolve through a lot of retailers. I think like people started opening up boutiques and shops. Like Goop was one of the early ones. Credo was an early one where they were, you know, they had this philosophy around clean. And it was the retailers that found Kosas and looked at the ingredients. I mean, like really, they were deep diving into the ingredient lists. And they were reaching out to me and saying, hey, we noticed your brand is clean because we read the ingredients. Do you want to, you know, be in our store? We have clean beauty. And then I was starting to see the category evolve. It wasn't just like the granola kind of like, you know, the grocery aisle stuff anymore. It was actually becoming, the element of luxury was being introduced into clean. And so Kosas took that path too.
So initially when you launched, what was kind of the USP that you were going after customers with? Like, was it that, you know, this is like a super luxurious product and you almost, it sounds like even though the ingredients were so intentional and like clean back then, since it wasn't a category, you weren't even flexing that. So what was it that you were like pushing to customers and like getting their attention?
The two biggest things were flattering color. And like, you have an olive skin tone and I have an olive skin tone. I spent my entire life not being able to find a lipstick that looked natural and flattering. Like where I put it on and I look better. Like people would say, I put on a little lipstick and like I bring so much life to my face. And I would put on a little lipstick and I would immediately look dead.
Yeah.
And I was like, why isn't this working? So really like the idea that like you can find easy color, like easy meaning it looks like you and is really flattering. That was number one. And number two was that it feels really comfortable. And the point of all those ingredients was so that it felt good. So that it didn't like hurt your skin while it was on it. You didn't take it off and end up having these like horribly dry lips.
Oh God,
or,
the worst.
Like it tastes gross, it smells gross, like you feel it, you taste, you know, you're just like having this sensorial experience that's negative, which I always associated with makeup and especially lip, because you really sense it. And I wanted to create something that you didn't feel anymore. And the path to that was through these ingredients. That's why they were like that. That's why it was designed that way.
And was the intention to kind of hone in on lipstick, or did you know that you'd kind of target beauty as a whole as time went by?
Yeah, I always knew it would be it would be full everything. Yeah, it was just the first thing.
I mean, it's smart though, and like this is a conversation that I've had with other founders as well, where like, you know, it's almost more strategic to start niche, because like with like one product or like one kind of type of product, because otherwise you stretch yourself so thin trying to get all of these things out. You've paid for all of this inventory, you don't even know like what's resonating. And so it sounds like you did the same thing with lipsticks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there wouldn't have been a way for me to do more than 4 lipsticks. I couldn't even do more than 4 lipsticks. Like it couldn't have been 6 or 8. Like I didn't know. I didn't have a retailer. I didn't have distribution. I didn't have shelf space like already lined up. I definitely went into it thinking just about that product and like the minimum viable even brand, you know, in order to start it. I wouldn't do it that way if I did it now.
Really? What would you do now?
If it were now, and I know what I know now, I would have placed a heavy emphasis and I would have invested in, and now I know how to do that, but I didn't know how to do that then. I would have placed a really heavy emphasis on brand DNA, brand identity, like the reason for being, like all the emotion and intention and like the storytelling. I would have spent a lot of time on that, and I would have really fleshed it out and like kind of taken it pretty far, you know? Like I would have been like, this is what a retail store would look like. This is what visual merchandising would look like. This is what 100 SKUs would look like, and this is why. I would have really built that brand architecture in a way that I could then communicate it to people. And then I would have started creating product.
Yes. However, I'm going to counter that a little bit, because I think as a first-time founder, it's the naivety that I think leads to all of it happening, right? Like it's interesting because I'm 3 years into my brand and there's so much that I know today. And yet like I have had this conversation where it's like, what would you do differently if you started Array today?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't, because I think the magic that was in Array is like everything that I didn't know and I kind of like learned along the way, you know? And I think that also oftentimes when people really overthink a brand before they launch it, it like takes so much longer, you know? Like you just went to fucking town with these like 4 lipsticks and like look at you now, you know?
Yeah, 10 years later, I know. No, it is true. It is, you'll never be a first-time founder again.
Exactly.
So you can never go back. You can't unsee what you've seen.
Totally.
So like, yes, your first time will be like that.
Yeah.
You know?
And there's like a little bit of magic there, you know?
There is. It's very sweet.
You know, it's interesting because I've had this conversation with my dad, like when I initially started my brand, and he's an entrepreneur. And I remember he had all of these questions. Like he's so supportive and he was really excited for me, but he was asking like just like devil's advocate questions. And I was like, nope, I just know that I'm doing this and it's going to do well, you know, because his mind, it's like he's not in that naive space anymore. Whereas I think a first time founder, it's always like glass half full. It's going to work out.
Totally.
Like, you know?
Totally. That's what gets you through. And I think it can still work out. You'll just ask a few more questions along the way. And you're right. It will look different.
100%. So talk to me about, I mean, you launched with these 4 SKUs. Like, was it that you saved up for it? Like, how did you even get it out the door?
It was a really minimal investment at that time.
Yeah.
It was like a tiny amount.
And this is the thing that
I only bought the lipsticks. Like there was no other money spent really.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that a lot of people think that you need this like huge upfront investment to start a brand. And I think stories like this are important because like even just to get one MVP out the door, like minimum viable product, just invest a little bit and see kind of how it does.
Yes.
And so like that was, I guess, how things went for you.
That is totally how it went. And it did like immediately have an appeal. Like I could see that what I was putting out there, even though I wasn't saying a lot because it's not like I had like a marketing team or a creative team or anything, like even making content. It was just kind of like, here are these lipsticks. Here's a one-page website with 4 blocks. And here are these lipsticks. And like somehow people were saying back to me what I was putting out, which is, oh my God, these are so flattering. Oh my God, these feel so good. Oh my God, these are so comfortable. And so like that let me know that something was working. And that was the information that I needed. It wouldn't have been great if I had like done, made a huge investment or done anything like that. But it is a different time now.
Yeah.
It is no longer, this was like before the algorithm. Like I was mailing packages out to every human I'd ever met in my life and asking them to post it on Instagram. Do you have Instagram? You should post it on Instagram.
This is vintage.
Yes.
I'm telling you.
This is vintage. Do you have Instagram? I just got it last year. You should post it on Instagram. Do you mind? Please post it on Instagram.
That was the hustle back then.
I don't even think there were influencers really yet. Like that, I don't know. That word was just coming out.
Yeah, it was just like, I think it was brand new. Like 2015 is like, it was just the wild, wild west in this whole industry. So, I mean, I think you got in though when it was still early and like people like grew with the brand as well, I'm sure, like because this is probably when like a lot of influencers were just getting started and like you were one of the earlier beauty brands which were like cool and indie.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So your distribution was primarily I'm guessing through your website
at first,
and then you started to get picked up by retailers.
I never used that word. I didn't know that word yet. At that time. But yeah, it was. And then we got picked up by retailers like very quickly. Little ones, like little boutiques. And I loved that because I wanted the brand to be, I wanted those lipsticks to feel like accessories. Like I wanted it, and I always felt this way. It was like, I feel like your makeup and your look is like a part of your whole total self.
Right.
And like, I didn't like this whole floating head concept thing that I always saw in beauty because I was like, well, how do I, like tell me more about like, how do I know I resonate with this particular lipstick? Like, what's the story it's telling? It's like a whole costume change, when you put on a lipstick. And so being in a fashion retailer was great because it felt like it was part of, it was helping me like tell an overall story about like who the person was. And then it became this little accessory that you could add on to your outfit.
What was the moment where you really started to notice traction? Like you were like, okay, well, shit, this is serious now.
Along the way, there have been many little moments like that.
Do you like? Can you remember like a couple of key ones?
The first couple were the very first one was it was a small article in the New York Times, and that was before we had any retailers. So it was like still like my own website, and I would get so excited like for each individual person that bought a lipstick and like write them a note. And when that New York Times article came out, like I couldn't keep up at that point, and that was that was really exciting. That was a definite moment where I was like, it was 6 months into it, and then I was like, yes, I can keep going, I can keep doing this.
And then after that, like at what point did you get picked up by like these, I guess like more well-known retailers like Goop or Sephora? I mean, Sephora is like a ginormous like achievement for any founder.
Yeah, and Sephora is like a world unto itself. The like a smaller boutique that might have like even up to like 10 locations is manageable for a very small team, and it's great. And like those were coming like Goop was the first one, and Goop was opening its stores at the same time that they were picking up Kosas, so it was kind of like in a weird way we were growing together. Granted, they were way bigger and growing way faster, but it was like all happening around the same time. And it was great because like I could go into each one of those stores individually and like spend time with consumers and really like educate. And we didn't have a lot. We had lipstick, blush, and tinted face oil or something like that. That was all. That was in the first like 2 or 3 years. And then Sephora was a little later. That was in the conversations with Sephora lasted a couple years before we actually went in.
So this is, I think, the behind the scenes that people maybe don't know. And like, I think founders like in beauty and adjacent spaces kind of know how difficult and also how long it takes to get into the gargantuan that is Sephora. Like I have other friends in beauty who were in conversations with Sephora for like a year and a half, 2 years. And it's not like one day you're not there and then tomorrow you are. It's like it's a process to get there.
It is.
So what was that whole process like for you? Did you have to make hires according to that? Like give everyone a behind the scenes look at what it takes to get into a larger retailer like that.
I will say that Sephora, the ethos behind Sephora is that Sephora themselves were an indie brand. in France 20-something years ago, and they couldn't get any of the big brands to actually be carried there because they're this whole open concept, open cell environment. And the big luxury brands wanted to be behind the counter at a department store. Like, that was the norm. And so when Sephora opened up this like really cool this concept, the bigger brands didn't want to work with Sephora. And so Sephora had to work with indie brands, really, really small brands. So it is in their DNA to understand how to do that. And they know that, like, that's what, you know, there is a lot of hand holding along the way, and they're trying to help. But like, you as a brand really just have to like go through it, you know, to really understand what all of that means and like what all the different moving parts are. So I would say what happens is, to sort of explain it, is what happens is you enter a little bit at a time. And like for us, we entered on this shelf, one shelf that was part of a larger collection of other clean brands. And it was like the shelf was made by Sephora, and they put our products on that shelf. And that was how we were able to start in that little bit at a time. And then from there, you graduate. It's just like going to school. Like, you have, you start out in kindergarten, and they completely understand that. And then maybe you have one or two people on your team. You know, it's like a small thing. And then you graduate a little bit at a time, because, you know, then you need like inventory management, like the appropriate creative. The biggest thing I would say for smaller brands to get their head around is the lead times, that how far in advance you really have to be working on your product calendar to be able to even partner with Sephora in a meaningful way. I mean, it's like at least 2 years or so in advance, maybe a year and a half.
Yeah.
But like, you're never there in the beginning, you know, like when I first started, it was like the day the product is finished, like we turn it on the website, and that can be whenever it is. And that's how it is when you're first starting.
Yeah, I mean, you're flying by the seat of your pants.
You're flying by the seat of your pants, so you're always a year and a half late. Yeah. Like from day one. So like, trying to bridge that gap is like what's happening for the beginning period of time.
Yeah, and also I think what people may not know is that I think everyone, like a lot of founders who maybe have this like retail dream, they think that like, okay, I'm going to get into Sephora or Ulta, Whole Foods, whatever your like dream big retailer is. And the amount, like, you're not even ready for that when you're like just starting out, you know, and going through step by step like you did, getting almost like your practice reps in with like smaller retailers and like growing from there. Yeah. In order to like understand what it takes to get to a Sephora, working out the kinks that I'm sure you had when you were, you know, with these smaller retailers. Like, you learn all of that so that when you're going into mass, you actually understand like, okay, well, shit, like this is serious.
Yeah, you do. And you understand like the things that you don't really know how to do. And then you find people who do know how to do them.
So something that I've noticed about you guys is that you, I would say in the last 3 years, have been just everywhere. Like, literally everywhere. I cannot escape you. Like, what you've done is just phenomenal. And how do you think you got there? Like, what do you think allowed you to go from like kind of this curve to like that? Because I feel like that's kind of what happened with your brand.
I think it's the things that I'm talking about, the like really that being ahead of yourself 2 years. That means that while we're preparing for that, there's like this 2-year gap of time that you're not seeing anything that like we've been getting ready. Yeah. And so that includes like building the team. It includes building the product pipeline. It includes like really understanding the brand and like the brand architecture, the brand DNA, and the product architecture and product DNA. And then being able to like really create an assortment of product that feels like it is also telling a story. And all of that, it takes a lot of preparation, and then which we did. We took a lot of time. We took a couple years to prepare it all, and then it started rolling out. And that's what you saw happen, is the rollout happening. And like then everyone's rowing in the same direction, like everything's firing at the same time. Everybody that needs to know what's going to happen is all in lockstep. So it's like curtains up, you know, like globally, all at once. And that takes a shitload of coordination to make happen, and time.
Yeah. Yeah, so much coordination, so much time. Like, trust me. I mean, I feel like I'm in it right now where, like, it's just been, like, ever since we started our brand, I was like, we all need to be speaking the same language. Like any new person that we bring on, like we all have to be like doing the same thing. And like, you know, finally we got like our marketing and like operations like calendar so that everyone has visibility. I'm like, oh, like we're all working towards the same goal, and it's so hard.
It takes a long time because there's like going to be a lot of people. There is the very beginning when it's just you by yourself, and like you have all of that information in your head, and you can be really fast because you're like, I know what marketing and operations and all of that's like coming through my own brain, and then later on it's not anymore, and now there's like all these other people involved, and then so yes, you do have to coordinate them. But I love what you said right before we sat down. When you gave me this, actually, the bloat supplements, and you said this is what we're known for. And I think that's like one of the big unlocks for any brand is to know what it is you're going to be known for and like stay with it. Because like you might, as a, you know, you might be like, is that, you know, I'm tired of hearing that, but like no one even knows yet. And like you do want to, like the brand and the product association, like the one thing that is associated with this one brand is so powerful. Yeah. I think it's probably the most powerful thing.
Oh, 100%. And I think that you start to realize that, like, I think as well as you get feedback and like you see kind of what is resonating with customers, like bloat, for example, like we didn't know that it would just like, you know, capture people's attention like it did and like become kind of that cult favorite. And so what we decided to do to respond to that was like zoom in on the digestive health category, right? So we just launched heartburn in February, and it was because people were like bloat, like that's what they wanted from us. And so we were like, okay, well, like clearly this is a gap in the market, and we're being able to I guess like address it because we understand digestive health, but also because we want to respond to what people are looking for. And so I think that like listening to consumer feedback is incredibly important, and zoom in on that and how it informs how you're going to build out your brand, I feel like.
And why did you, sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but I actually have a question.
Yeah.
Why did you make this product?
So I had suffered from like immune system issues and then digestive health issues, and kind of I'd become passionate about holistic wellness because of my own health journey. And something I kept seeing was that, you know, anytime I'd go to brunch or dinner or like hanging out with my friends, like the biggest conversation was how bloated everyone was. And I knew that you could troubleshoot it with like natural things, and we didn't have to go into the drugstore to get like Tums or Pepcid or like these things that are horrible for us. And people were taking these things every day. It was crazy. Like just like popping pills, you know? And I changed my life by like with holistic things. And so as a hyper consumer, because I was a creator ahead of launching Array, I was like, the whole beauty industry, like I can go and I have the things that I need at Sephora for my skincare, and it's so easy to navigate as a consumer. You know, you get something for your under eye circles or your hyperpigmentation, whatever your issue is. It's very consumer friendly. It's also like either, you know, like formulated by a derm or a chemist. It's beautiful, so people actually want to use it. And so that was the gap that I wanted to fill, where it was like my husband and I, we were like, okay, people are very confused by this category, and we just wanted to come up with like simple solutions. So like, you know what bloat is for. Like, what could it be for? It's for bloating, you know? And
it's like something you suffered from.
Exactly. And so it was like it was a need that I had, and I knew that everyone had. And also, if you think about like how much you're constantly fixating on like problems that you feel within your body, you can't show up as the best version of yourself if you're bloated or like having digestive discomfort or whatever your issue is. And so that's what we wanted to help with, like optimizing people's health so they could show up as the best versions of themselves. Yeah. And so along the way,
and like you had personal experience with
that.
Oh
my
so
God.
Like you probably knew what it felt like to have digestive issues and not be able to, like, if
Sheena,
you have had that experience, then you're embodied in like the product, you know?
And I mean, I remember like having to literally go home after dinner because my stomach would hurt so much, or, you know, I couldn't go out and continue the night with my friends, or I was like so picky about what I was eating and I just couldn't enjoy myself because I was so paranoid about something that would like set my stomach off, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's what we wanted to solve for, because like fact of the matter is that people want to live life and we want to give them the freedom to like do that, you know? And so this is something you take and you feel the impact of right away. Like you're bloated after a meal, you have it in under an hour that goes away. So you can just like live your life. You know, and that's what we wanted.
Yeah, we want to be able to live our life. I think it is actually so powerful to make something for yourself. Like, of anything I've ever done when I'm solving my own problem.
Yes.
Like, we just have so many commonalities as people that, like, that, I think, first of all, there's the passion and the true wanting to get to the root of it because you're doing it for yourself. And then you do that, and then you're like very excited about sharing it with other people because you've discovered something, and that's powerful.
Well, also, I think that it gives you a sense of purpose even when things are going wrong, you know? I think that with entrepreneurship, you're out there like literally putting out fires on a daily basis, and when you're having the worst of days, it's actually not so bad because you feel this sense of like purpose and like drive that like, no, you know, I'm doing this because this is my why, you know? And I don't think I could do what I do unless I felt what I felt about our products and like my mission, you know what I mean?
Totally.
And I'm sure you can relate to the same thing because, you know, what you're saying about makeup and wanting to make people like, you know, like the transformative ability that makeup has and like doing it with like ingredients that feel good. It's like, it's such an important mission.
It is. I mean, and I love makeup. I love makeup and I get so much joy out of it. And I love that feeling of understanding yourself and feeling good within yourself and then wanting to show up as that same person that you feel on the inside and like having these little tools to do it, giving yourself that space and time, like giving myself that hour to do my makeup is so special to me. And I feel like I am giving myself a treat and I'm like having fun with myself. I'm nurturing myself. I'm touching my own face. I'm expressing myself creatively through, you know, it's like pure expression. And all of that is happening through makeup. And like, that's the point of view that I think, that is not unique to me. Like, I know that people feel that way, but the industry has for so long put this idea in our head that we have something wrong that we have to fix. Mm-hmm. And like, I actually I think we all know that we don't have something wrong that we have to fix. I mean, many of us do. But like, what about the other way? I have something so right that I want to shine, you know, like I really want to show it. I really want to share that with everyone. And so I feel that way. And I just like, after all these years, I still love, you know, I'm like always doing this like hand swatching, you know, touching textures. Like I love that. And that's a privilege and an honor to be able to do something like that, because truly it is fun. Like that we get to do something that's really pleasant, you know, like I know that has its challenges and it has its struggles, but definitely like it's focused on the brighter side of life for sure.
100%. So what did you release after lipsticks? Like what was your second category that you went, or subcategory, I guess, because it's all
the second one was blush.
Really?
Yeah, because you have to balance the color on your face, you know.
I love that.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, so I want to ask an audience question because I always do that around the end of the interview. What do you think led to you blowing up on social media?
God, you're talking about TikTok probably, right?
Like I feel like there was just this movement and like kind of like virality with your products that happened.
I think that it was really around revealer concealer. So like that concept of being known for something, like that product had so much, like every thing about the brand showed up in that product. It was like a really beautiful finish. It had really great coverage. It does what it's supposed to do. It also nourishes the area and it has this very alive finish. So it looks really skin-like. Like you would put it on and you would say, your skin looks amazing. You wouldn't say your makeup looks so good or something like that. And so like that, and that just like that sweet spot of coverage too. Mm-hmm. And so we had this thing that we were known for, And it was because people really liked it. I mean, the thing about makeup is like you cannot fake it.
Yeah.
There's no fake it till you make it with a product, because especially something that's complexion, because like you're putting it directly on your skin. If it doesn't work, you're throwing it away immediately. And if you will know when you run out, do you buy it again? Mm-hmm. Like that's the telltale sign, you know? And so it was really through Revealer Concealer. It was like through the overall love of Revealer that like there kind of became this like groundswell.
Did you know that it was going to be such a big product when you released it? Like, did you understand what it was going to do?
I didn't know that it was going to be like the key pillar of the brand. And we had in 2022, so we had released Revealer Concealer in 2019, right before COVID.
No way. I did not know that.
It was a 3-year build. Huh. And that's the thing about makeup that's different than fashion. It's not an immediate thing because it's not seasons and collections. It's loyalty and love. And that happens over time. Like you have to go through 3 years. Like you have to go through 3 or 4 tubes of Revealer Concealer before you understand that that's your concealer and you don't want to use a different one. And so it took a few years. It took, 2019 to 2022. And in 2022, we released Revealer Foundation because we did know that there was such a love of Revealer Concealer and people were using it all over their faces. Mm-hmm. And as like they were using it as their foundation as a hack. And so we were like, we should make a foundation. And once we released Revealer Foundation, there was the power of the two together was actually probably that step change that you're referring to.
Smart, because you listen to your consumer as well. Okay, so before you leave, though, I need to know what lipstick you're wearing and what eyeshadow.
I can't tell you.
Oh, my God. Well,
I'm sorry.
We are waiting to find out. This was so fun. Tell everyone where they can find you, where they can find Kosas. Tell us everything.
You can find me on Instagram. I have it now. My handle is Sheena, Sheena. You can find Kosas on Kosas.com. And you can find us at Sephora. You can find us at Credo. You can find us at Goop. There's a bunch of places, a bunch of amazing places, and I don't want to leave anyone out. So if you check Kosas.com, it'll give you a list of everywhere that you can find Kosas.
Thank you so much for being here. This was so fun.
Thank you so much.